the environment is changing very rapidly, as we know, and so the new impetus to look into comparative effectiveness as well as reimbursement schemes, and of course the entire debate on healthcare reform in the United States is opening a lot of doors and also creating new pressures on pharmaceutical companies to think about drug development in a different way. So I do feel that, in fact, during drug development, companies ought to think about the reimbursement schemes that they will be facing and the comparators that they will be facing. And therefore it's no longer sufficient to think about drug development as ending with the approval of an NDA or an MAA, but rather as continuing with accessing the schemes for reimbursement and pricing and comparative effectiveness. So my view is that companies ought to begin drug development with reimbursement in mind. It's often been said that drug development should be done with the end in mind, and the end traditionally has been thought of as the NDA approval. In fact, it needs to be framed in the context of what will the payers be willing to pay for. We've had several sessions at DIA this year having to do with what is innovation, and what innovation will attract funding, what innovation will attract reimbursement. I think sponsors need to increasingly think about their innovative intellectual property, the one that they're about to develop into a medicine, and whether that medicine, if approved, would in fact be reimbursed by any entity, any payer, and at what level. If sponsors don't think about that until after phase 3, they may be facing a reimbursement scheme or framework or environment that will not be favorable. They may be told that in fact their newly approved medicine doesn't really provide an advantage, that it may be too expensive, that it's not attractive to the payer community, although it may be attractive to the patient community. So the upshot of all of this is that sponsors, regulators, and payers need to probably communicate as a tripartite team much earlier in development than has been the case, at least in the United States. And there need to be encounters and discussions at the end of phase 2 or perhaps even earlier. I mentioned the end of phase 2 because that is the time when the sponsors and the regulators traditionally agree on the structure and nature of the phase 3 program, which, as we all know, is the most expensive and labor-intensive and risky part of drug development. If the payers were part of the end of phase 2 conversation and were able to say, all right, if this phase 3 program is constructed in this particular way, it includes a comparator, we, the payer community, would be interested in reimbursing and paying the proper price. If, on the other hand, the phase 3 program does not include a comparator arm, we in the payer community really would not see any reason to reimburse this drug that apparently will be rather expensive because it's a high cost of goods to manufacture, maybe it's a biotechnology product, and so unless it shows a superiority to something that is already on the market, if it shows superior efficacy, more favorable safety, we may not be interested in really putting it in our portfolio of reimbursed drugs. Seems to me that a sponsor would want to know that early in the drug development cycle and make the appropriate go-no-go decisions.